Guys, you have no idea how excited I am for this episode. Phil, we're in for a treat. We have the man, the myth, the legend, the guy. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for this guy. Like, literally, would not be on this planet. You and I wouldn't have met, Phil, if it wasn't for this guy. And I'm excited. We got, in honor of Father's Day coming up, we got my dad on the podcast, and I can't wait to dive into these stories. Dad, how you doing?
This is a good day. You know why it's a good day? Because I learned something. Every day you learn something's a good day.
That's
Absolutely.
true.
I didn't learn much, but it was something.
Well, we had coffee this morning, and we had a guest have something come up. And so I was like, hey, Dad, what do you think about hopping on the podcast today? And you're like, oh, man, I don't know. And I said, you got to challenge yourself on purpose. And you were like, all right, let's do it. These are things I want to start doing. And we talk a lot about on this podcast the perception of success. We talk a lot about perception of happiness. What do the rest of our lives look like? What are we striving for? What's our ideal states? But also focusing on what we've accomplished along the way, so that way we can continue driving our own happiness and building the legacies that we want. And you're a legacy guy. I've gotten that from you. It's been instilled in me ever since day one. Yep. I remember you wanted to build the Harris family as the Kennedys, if you will, having that type of a legacy.
You shook my whole thing.
Okay, well, let's get into it. Jump into it. I don't want to steal your thunder. Bill Harris is on the podcast, and everyone's in for a treat. And just real quick background on the MasterTax platform. You can see on my shirt, I pulled out the old polo. Phil and I met at a company called MasterTax back in 2008, and MasterTax was born. It would not even be around in this world without Bill Harris, my dad, developing it from scratch with no internet in the mid-90s. And I can't wait to dive in some of the backstories. So take it away, Dad. Give us some background, and it's your show. And you can start off with whatever it is you want to start off with.
Let's start off with the my goals, or what are my successes. Since I was a little boy, maybe third, fourth grade or so, I realized the value of family. And family to me it has been and it still is the most important thing to me. So as I was growing up, I did some things that were interesting, like most teenagers would, I guess. And I did some things that were really, really good. And on the good things, a lot of those things that I did good kind of show up in these podcasts here. So at least I have one person who remembers what they are, with my son here, Stephen. And Phil knows a few. I heard it the other day, and that's what made me think about the podcast. I like that, an asset to society. That has been extremely important to everybody I know. That one's a fair statement to be I can remember saying it to anybody. I was in one place where someone was in a wheelchair, and I said an asset to society to her, and she was offended by it because she's in a wheelchair. I said, you don't have to be able to walk or run or whatever. You could be doing stuff with your hands. You could be just doing it with your mind. You could be reading a story. You're an asset to society just with those attributes. And so she felt better, but she stopped crying, but she felt better. So you have to be careful there. That's important to me. That's where I am now. I have actually officially retired again for the third time. I'm not doing it. I do a lot of work. I just don't get paid for it. And so
you sound like an emerging entrepreneur as well. You do a lot of work and you don't get paid for it yet.
Circle of life.
Yeah. I do have this new thing that I want to present, but I got to sell it to my wife, Karen, your mom, Stephen. And it has to do with our real estate ventures. We do hobby projects with real estate. So we flip some houses here and there. We've done pretty well. We may sell 2 today, as a matter of fact, close them. And so that's work. Now she's the brains behind all that. She doesn't like it when I get involved. So what I was to MasterTax, she is to our Models by Design company. And
that's been a lot of fun for you guys. And I know we'll get into that, down the road and into this podcast of how that all works, because it was a pivot, right? I mean, you were business, software developer, and nothing in real estate at all up until when MasterTax was sold in 2010. But going back to the asset to society thing, Dad, we just talked about that. And I was on a few episodes ago, and Phil brought that up. And I didn't necessarily realize, that was always something you instilled in me, but I didn't necessarily realize that was something you told everybody around. And I think that's the impact that you've made on a lot of people that you probably don't realize, is that just by being you, you've inspired and motivated so many people all along your entire life. And Phil was bringing that up, and I'll let him kind of jump in on that topic. But I think that's important for you to know. And the legacy that you're building is the impact that you've made along the way on so many people in this world.
Well, I always wanted to have a funeral with more than 2 people in it, which probably should happen.
Well, it's good you had 3 kids.
I plan on living a long time. So, anyway.
Well, that one, the reason I brought that one up is it was up on the whiteboard every day for however many years that was, seeing it on the board. And I remember, my first coming on board at MasterTax, the interview process with you and everything. One of the key things that stood out to me and a lot of the people that you work for was, and I was told this about you before going through that interview process, and my father was the same way. It was, if you come with a question, you should come with it with a perspective that you've actually done some digging on that problem or question, and show that you've actually taken a number of stabs at this before bringing it to you. And I know that everyone that's listening to this now, Google is a part of their daily lives. But back then it was kind of like the amount of information at your fingertips for the types of problems that we were looking at was relatively new. And it was like, basically, Phil, you're going to be on Google a lot. And if you ask a question, have a proposed solution when you bring it to the table, or it's going to be a rather short conversation. And you're always polite about it. But take me back to that, where it's probably just a general level of efficiency when you're trying to run an entire organization like MasterTax was. But when you were working with people like that, what did you hope to see, or even today with these problems that are coming to you, the thought process of a problem? The thing I wanted to mention on that is it's important for you to bring something to the table. So you did your work, because I look at things always that I feel differently, but I look at those people over there. I said, I'm not as smart as they are. If I think I'm smarter than them, then I shouldn't be there. And I hear that a lot in your podcast, at least on various other layers. And I believe in that. Now, do I think I will get as smart as those guys? Sure. Put me in a room. It's going to take me a little bit of time to catch up to speed, but I will catch up to speed. New job, new thing. I'm trying to still figure out what in the hell AI is, but I'll do that.
Aren't we all?
Same way I got into computers. I had no idea when 1974, I got involved in computers with a trade company called Control Data Institute. And the reason I did that is because I said, how do you get a printer to type itself, just like a typewriter? It's just typing. I couldn't understand that. So then I went to there, figured out how computers work, and a number of years later, I decided that I didn't want to just do what I was doing, working for somebody and doing that. I had these ideas. I actually went to our corporation, and they used to run everything on mainframe computers. And I said, we could put this on PCs, and we could put those PCs on everybody's office, and they can just, do their own thing. And they just pay us money. And they said, no, that's a terrible idea. So I said,
wow.
Found somebody that had money, so I wouldn't have to live in a tent when I did this. But I said, Dick Warniga, who was my mentor and still my mentor. You always think that person's not as good as you are, when he was a lot better than I was, and probably still is, because he's just my mentor. It's very easy to just get off track here.
Well, going back to the computers, like in 1974, we're, so many of us don't remember anything past. Maybe we had when the Macs were first coming out, you had all the colors, and like you had the desktop computer, and they were all small, right? Like you had the screens, and we had AOL, AIM, our generation of the late 30s, early 40s, kind of growing up with computer. But you're talking about computers that were like bigger than you. There was no screens. Yeah. It was like it was just a think box, and you had to figure out how to make it work. There was no mouse, there was no keyboard, there was none of that stuff, right? And that's just wild to think about. I worked at a bank for a number of years. And what we did is capture checks, put them on a magnetic tape. You had to put tape in like you did on a reel movie. Put a tape on so you can record it.
It was educational. I worked graveyard, so I actually took that time that I worked graveyard. I was always finished early, there by myself, maybe one other person sometimes, so I program on the computer just by writing programs and using key punch cards and do things. And so you just learn how logic, and you just learn how to. I had a problem at work. I had to solve it. I took it to the programming staff, and they said, that's a good idea. We'll get to it sometime. And they never did. So I just kind of wrote it myself and put it together. And they said, oh, you should go tell the boss that. So I did. And he goes, that's a good job. Thank you. And you just do things because there's a need. Now that I look at it, I think a lot of things I've done are just because there's been a need. Not necessarily a want, but a need. And wants are good. But wants are wants and needs are needs, and needs have to be done. And wants are just, okay, I don't have to have that, but I want it. Now, just once so you go into success, right? What is success? And it's kind of achieving a goal or a milestone. So a milestone could be a want. It's not a goal. A goal is something that it could take you 10 minutes. It may take you 20 years. And goals change. You have minor goals, you have little goals, you have larger goals. My most important goal is my family development. I have 3 kids. I have 7 grandkids, and all of them I think are the smartest people in the world. So when I'm in a room with them, matter of fact, my grandson beat me in chess the other day.
He beats me every freaking time. That guy, Jack, my son. God,
I said, okay, Jack, come on, another game. But he's 11, so he deserves that win.
Apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
I didn't give it to him; he just played. Anyway, Peter's grew up. I grew up. I got to the point where I found someone's money, and he funded me so I could eat during programming time. And we worked weekends. We worked late at night. We worked all the time. But that's what it is. We had a goal in mind, and we hit the goal. We hit the goal. We had being successful is finishing, sounds like, but it's not. Sometimes you reach a goal without being complete, so it's not success. My success was offering MasterTax as a product for sale, and what I wanted the goal to be is that for the largest tax filing service on a individual platform in the world, and we were purchased by a fairly large company that allowed that to happen. We had the good start. They had a lot more clients, and they are still running with it. And then 12 years later, I'm pretty happy about that. So,
as you should be. And when you talk about seeing that vision and the want versus need, like most entrepreneurs, you're not giving people what they necessarily want. You see a vision that they cannot see.
right.
So there's a big chasm there in between seeing the problem and actually even getting anywhere close to delivering it. So can you talk about a little bit about that process? Because the amount of communication and design work to actually build a product, whether it's software or not, comes with a ton of resistance, which is an understatement. But can you talk about how you start knocking down those dominoes when no one can even see the solution because they haven't even thought that far ahead that there's a solution to this problem that they don't even know they have?
First off, like you said, there was one other competitor I had, so there's a little bit out there about this. They were weak. I knew they were weak, and I just needed to build something that was a little bit more elaborate than what they did. What we ended up putting together was something that's a full-featured, fully functional tax filing system done on your desktop, and it was unheard of. Just people use mainframes to do that, thousands and millions of dollars worth of computers to do that, and I could do it for a few hundred, a couple $1,000s for a computer, a little bit more for the software, and it did the same exact thing, maybe even more.
Well, I was just going to say that just for people listening, this product, MasterTax, when you think about like filing your personal income taxes, a lot of people know about TurboTax. MasterTax was an enterprise software for Fortune 500 companies to process their payroll taxes. So payroll taxes, your Social Security, your Medicare, your federal and state income taxes that are deducted from your paycheck, those taxes need to be paid and filed to the agency. So what you built was a software that streamlines that entire complex process of scheduling those payments, making the payments, reconciling at quarter end, and filing those tax returns with the IRS and the state agencies. And as you mentioned, a lot of people were doing this on mainframes, and it wasn't an very accessible or easy process. Yeah, spreadsheets, very manual. And then you got into the service bureau space where you have payroll providers out there, similar to the ADPs and the Paychecks of the world, that were also processing payroll taxes in bulk for many small business clients. And that software would batch file and do everything. So I think just sharing the importance of how much complexity goes into filing these taxes, and the software that you built to put it, and it was a CD, as a disk. At first it was a floppy, I think, and then it was a CD, and then you put it on your laptop or your computer, and then now you're able to file all these things with a dial-up, right? With a dial-up internet connection.
Dial-up, yeah, that's right. Dial-up. Forget about. You have to watch War Games if you want to hear that noise. That's a pretty good movie for early days in the internet.
Yeah, that brings me back to the AOL screen name B-Ball32, talking to all my buddies at the dial. And we only had one phone line when we were kids, right? So we'd be like, Dad, can we jump on? And you're like, no, I need the phone line. I need to work.
Yeah. Eventually they came out with a way of doing it a little bit better, but that was a long time before the internet too, or as you said, AOL.
And even going from dial-up to, talking about the technology advances, one of the things that I think is so fascinating is how ahead of the game you were in regard to, or we were, I should say, but you, on what everyone knows and operates on now, what is cloud. But before it was called cloud, you had to sit me down in the office and explain to me what we called hosted versus non-hosted. I had absolutely no idea what was going on. You had to break it down on me on the whiteboard. And that's what I live and breathe every
cloud. That's what, I didn't realize it at the time. I was doing things that hadn't even been invented yet.
Exactly.
Like the cloud, right? There was no cloud. There was, I just said, I have a problem. I have all these customers out here who don't want to have equipment, but I have this very powerful machine here in my office, my data center, which I can then, technology exists where I can transmit the data to them back and forth, just like we're doing today. Cloud processing, I didn't invent it, but I used it before anybody I know. And it was amazing.
And when you explained that to me in the office, I was like, why wouldn't everybody do this and not have to use have the Oracle? And I just think it's so funny there versus today, how now no one blinks an eye. But at that point, convincing them was not, it was a tough conversation to have. Yeah,
mostly with large companies that they just said, no, our security won't allow that to happen. Mm-hmm. Well, let me come in. I went to their place, Shell Oil Company. I go to their place. I talk to them. I show their IT team what we have and the insides of it. And they asked me a question. I go, how many people do you have in your company? And I said, well, see, everybody in this room, there's about 12 people there. That's more people than we have in the company. So the thing is we could do a lot for little, and that's what we did. We had the thing you have, I want to make sure is clear for most entrepreneurs, they have to have a point where they say, I can't do this because I don't have the thing to do it with. So I have to go build this thing to do it with so I can build what I want to do. So you gotta want, like the cloud thing. I built it, but I didn't know what it wasn't called the cloud then. It was just, I had a need to get these people to access this data on this computer and be able to print back reports over here. And so, cloud computing, ta-da.
Yeah, you can't get more innovative or forward thinking than that. And as we were talking about, this is like late 90s, early 2000s when it was first client came on board, 1997, I believe is what you've always told me. And software is being built in the mid to early 90s.
Started the software development in 95. And then we built it out for 2 years. First company came on in 97. You're right.
Yeah, and I just remember growing up, in an entrepreneurial family. Mom worked at the company with you, and she was doing. I remember sitting in, I was in the living room, and you were in your office, and Mom was in the pool. What was now, I don't know, a transition from the pool table room to the theater room or whatever. But before there was a desk in there, and she was drawing forms, tax return forms, just drawing them so that way you can load them into the system, so they would pre-populate. So I grew up with that. I grew up with that work ethic.
By the way, no one would do that either.
What's that?
I said no one could do that either. They just printed facsimile forms on the other software services that, like I said, there was someone else that didn't do it well. We got ours. My wife would draw the form and then submit it to the agency, like the IRS, and say, "Here's our form. Do you approve it?" And they say, "Sounds good." And they approve it. We did that every year. For every year, there's a change to the form. We had to have them approved. So that was a big task. But that's just what we did. Let me see your shirt. Lean up, Steve. MasterTax. Okay, there's a tagline behind that, which we came up with. It says MasterTax. It knows the rules.
It knows the rules.
Karen's the one that found out all the rules, and then she put it into the system. So it's kind of like an AI. So as soon as we had this data, as soon as this data touches this rule, it goes, it makes it happen. That's what AI does. Am I right?
Absolutely. It's incredible stuff. Like, this is growing up and seeing this. Like, I didn't realize it until obviously I was much older. The amount of, like, the work ethic I got from just being around it, and the grit and the tenacity of, like, there's an issue, there's things that aren't done, there's things that we can do better. And it's like, we're just going to make it happen. And between you and mom, and then your first few hires and your team, like, there is a book that should be written about these backstories. And I think it would be an incredible read for a lot of, especially new entrepreneurs, to know what it takes to, because a lot of people think in this day and age, it's a blink of an eye, you can become a millionaire, right? Oh, online business, boom, start, and that's it. And it's like, there's still a lot of hours that you have to put into this thing to grind and build your business and build the foundation. And then you start hiring the smart people to help, the ones that you mentioned earlier that are smarter than you, that you can work with, that make it even better than what you ever thought. But I think it's pretty cool to, fast forward to when Phil and I met in 2008. You had the software, first client 97, 2008 is when I think you hired 25 employees that year. I was one of them and Phil was one of them. And that's when we met at the ripe old age. I think Phil was 21. I was 22 years old. And you gave us both an opportunity that we'll never, ever take for granted. And it shaped our entire lives. And you could have easily looked at either one of us and been like, yeah, no, I'm going to hire some people that I think are smarter and I know will really do well. And Phil and I talk about it all the time, how we thank you for that opportunity, but it was, we had to make it happen. And you gave us that initial kick in the door.
And those things, opportunities, they come up. Like I said, I have an idea for a business, not for me. I don't want to, I'm retired, right? But I still like to talk that stuff. I miss the meetings. I miss the design stuff. When ADP, which is the company that bought our software, when they bought us, I expected them to use our software for their back room office, their data center for their in-house processing. They got to a point where they said, it's just too complicated. We can't do that. And I'm going, oh my God, this is so, please, can I come in? I didn't ask for that, but my wife would have been bothered. But I could see it all happening. I really wanted to build it out and to make it a full, same software in-house and out-house. One of the interesting story, the ADP vice president of IT was in a meeting that I was in after that we were purchased. And we were talking about changing the FICA rate. FICA is what you pay for, as a percentage that you pay of your earnings to Social Security. And so the rate changed from this to this. And we're talking about it. And I said, he goes, it took us about 100 hours to do that, to make that change in our software. And I said, it took us 25 seconds. And probably 20 of that was just going up the stairs to give it to Karen. And then this is the reason we bought you.
Yeah, that's it. I don't know how much you can talk about that process, but just going through an acquisition like that, what was your, how long, like from start to finish, did it take? You don't have to give any financial details or anything, but just like, what was the process like from your perspective? And, just for anyone listening that potentially is going to go down this route, I think it's important to know, to hear from someone like you who's gone through an exit and see what was that like from start to finish. Was it stressful? Was it just annoying? Was it, thank God that this is happening? Or anyway, just dive into that. Yeah, maybe just dive into that a little bit.
I
From
have
your
a
perspective.
follow-up question on this once you get this response out.
So let me answer that. The main thing is to be true to people that you know throughout your career, because you never know when someone's going to come back and say, "Hey, can you help me?" And I'm a pretty relaxed person most of the time, and I am somebody who will always try and teach people how things are done according to my view. And then if they want to do it differently, that's their choice. But I had someone who went to work for ADP, and they were looking for a solution for their tax filing, and so she called me up and says, "Are you interested?" And they came in and did a study, and they said, "Here, we'll give you this amount of money for the company." And I said, "I can't retire on that." And so, let us do some things. They came back 2 years later. By that time, our product pretty much exploded in the marketplace. And so we had a pretty big base, but we were tired, and my partners really wanted to get out of it. So we just decided that we'd sell the company to them. And so, but if it wasn't for that person, Janet Broderick is her name, if it wasn't for her, then telling ADP that what I did, then we would have not been here talking. So
one relationship, that's wild.
We had a good relationship, a working relationship a few years before that. And anyway, so that's what you got to do first. So it's not something you do today, it's something you do every day.
So when they said, "Hey, they sent you a number that you were happy with," was it pretty quick, or did it take a long time, due diligence, and was that a challenging process going through that once you both agreed with the letter of intent?
When we agreed to agree on a basic number, it was then they got into due diligence and stuff like that. 2 months.
That was pretty quick. It was quicker than I thought.
Yeah, that's shorter than I thought too.
One of the things that we had two things that were bottlenecks. One was we were out of balance, and so they brought in their own resources. We hung out in a hotel room, in a hotel conference room down the street, hours and hours each day, just going through this stuff and talking. And then they brought in their accounting team to look at all it's just all kinds of stuff going on. IT team, they had everything in the cloud by then, so they had to move everything in our cloud to their cloud. And so that took a while to do that also.
I'm not surprised that the first thing you said was the people when Stephen asked that question about the acquisition, and that was the first thing that's top of mind. And we've talked a lot about the technology and that build up to now, but I think one of the most impressive things was about MasterTax was you had a family dynamic, a true family dynamic there, but even the employees that were there felt like they were part of a community. And the term open door policy gets thrown around a lot, but you were able to communicate in the KPASA meetings, which was our kind of like roundtable for the entire organization. You had a way of really reaching all the areas of the business and being able to, whenever there were pivots or changes, people felt the ability to reach out to you and either get further educated or actually, get a, not necessarily a pep talk, but a why are we doing this? And you built that very intentionally at MasterTax, even though that your product, you're, an engineer at heart, the people portion was always very evident what we had going there. And it was very, very special, easier to see in hindsight than it was there. It was just a great place to work for a lot of people. But when you look back, it was really, really conducive in a synergetic environment, which that term gets thrown around a lot too. But was that kind of natural for you, or was it?
Yes, I still do that today.
Yeah.
I will go up and, just that I know things. I don't think I know things, but I do. And so when I see some things, I help them out, or I just put myself in the mix here to try and have a good solution. And, it's again, a lot of stuff I read what is being done here. I said, where do you get all this stuff, right? And so, but it's just stuff that I also have done for I don't know, it's natural. That's what's a better good word. It's just natural. It comes out natural. I don't force it. It just happens.
You're unconsciously competent at it, and it's also a lot of hard work. We're not discounting that, but you paired that hard work out with just a natural operating system that's not very common, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think it's pretty, as you mentioned earlier, is all about family and legacy and, your dynamic. It was pretty clear and evident growing up. Obviously I was very active in sports, and as I have my kids in sports, I know how challenging that is as a parent now to get your kids to sports and all the games and all the things that you have going on. And I just remember you were at every single one of my games, but I also know that you work 20-hour days building MasterTax. And I just think that's incredible where you did not lose sight of your family throughout that build. Because there's a saying that I have is, if your legacy and the things that you're trying to build are for your family, but you're not there for them along the way, they won't be there for you in the end. And so what the heck was even the point? And I think you are an absolute advocate for being able to build a very successful business from scratch, putting in the work, 20-hour days for 10 straight years or however long it was, and then still be there for your family. And so I think it's just a huge testament for who you are. And a lot of the stuff that we do talk about, you're correct. It's not, especially the things I write about in the storybook and bring up here in this podcast, it is coming from you. Even just the perspective stuff of, I don't have to do anything. I get to do it, right? Just the positive perspective. I don't have to go to grandma's house. I get to go to grandma's house, right? And I don't have to go to work. I get to go to work to be a resource. And so you have those perspective changes, and all of that was learned from you. And you just have that warming feeling with so many people.
So one of the things that I did, I used to work for Computer Science Corporation for about 6 months to a year. But I learned stuff from them. I learned different programming languages. I learned different things. And so when I got the chance to see my tax system ideas, I already knew how I was going to do it because I learned some things from somebody who knew more. But the other thing I noticed, another thing I had was there was a guy named Fife. He was our VP. And so he had things on the wall called Fifeisms. And I always thought, that is so cool. I go, I want to do that. And that's the key thing. So I over the years, I have developed a whiteboard in my garage now that has all these Harrisisms.
No Harrisisms.
Are they Harrisism or are they Van Cleefisms?
Yeah, right. Well, I'm thinking I'm going to get rid of Van Cleef. I don't know. Van Cleef is am I done with that? Because let's get serious now. But
the alter ego. I don't want to see Van Cleef go.
Sedona the other day, and I think I saw a Van Cleef something in Sedona. So, but there's little things like this is what I really like is I make mistakes, but I'm not wrong. Okay, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I make mistakes, but I'm not wrong, and I'll correct it. I'll make it so I don't make that mistake again. Okay, so that one and
that's a good one.
And
Steven has definitely inherited that one. He's changed up the wording a little bit, but he lives and breathes that every day.
That's right.
That's the winner learn.
So here's the my own rudimentary. No, explain to educate, not to justify. Phil, why did you do that? Well, let me tell you why I did that, Mr. Harris. Because so you're explaining to me to educate me why you did it, not to justify, why you did this thing.
Yeah, so that kind of that's like the approach of you're not trying to you're not trying to backtrack or prove yourself. You're trying to teach someone else why you did something. It's not saying, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble and this is why I need to explain what I did. It's more of like, well, I did it because it's confidence. I think that exudes confidence. You're explaining to educate versus justify why you did something in a way.
And that's what all these were generated from real life stuff. I what I call the top 10 on my board, and I haven't put anything up there for a while, but focused anger. This is when you're mad about something, if you focus that anger, it creates great determination.
Oh, you can weaponize it. You can really harness it to make it a good thing. Yeah,
because being angry at somebody doesn't help you. But if you can focus it and you can be determined to whatever you got to do with that.
Absolutely.
Let's see, the other one I like. My favorite one I came up with is not all ideas are good ideas, but if you never have any ideas, you'll never have a good idea. So, and these have been up here for years. I've been doing this. I moved houses. I moved the whiteboard. So this is probably the whiteboard's third place to live. Never grow up, but do grown-up things. Ooh, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
That's when you, yeah.
Yeah, you got probably a whiteboard filled with what, 15 of those things, and it definitely remember all of those.
Up here when I first put the whiteboard up 30 some years ago, probably, Shannon drew her name on it and colored it in, and it's still there in the middle of the whiteboard, very present.
Yeah.
So first thing I look at, I see Shannon. Now, there used to be one other person up there, but I deleted her. Bummer.
Got the eraser on that one. All right. Well, so pivoting from MasterTax, not retired, right? 'Cause you don't really retire ever. Although now you say you are, but I don't know. The jury's still out there. You're always working on something. You're always trying to make an impact on something. But so then, MasterTax sold, took some time, did some traveling a little bit, had some fun, and then you and Mom got into real estate, which was a brand new industry. And she started following her passion, and you backed her on that, right? Mm-hmm. And so it was like, okay, go ahead and let's do this. Let's see what we can make of this. You did some stuff in Colorado with Shannon, and then you guys did some stuff on your own as well, and flipping homes and designing, and that's what Mom really loves to do. And then you kind of got into it too. You got excited about it. I know I've had conversations, so you love it. So talk about that pivot when you go from working with computers all the time to now a completely different industry, and what the challenges were there. Like now everything's different. You got to learn all new stuff.
People.
There's a theme here.
Yes,
relationships. You can eventually get it to do what you want. People, not so much.
People management is a little tougher.
Like contractors. And there's a different, I'm not used to wearing a hard hat. I'm not used to wearing steel-toed boots, right? And so they're a different type of person I am. So I had to come back and relate to that crowd. I had to relate to them in order to work with them. And that was challenging. It's just challenging. Mostly when things take twice as long as they should and cost twice as much. You challenge them and they say, prices increased. What do I do? This you deal with it. We did that for the direct build houses. We did for about 6 years. Now we get into recently, in the last 4 years, we got into flipping houses. We put that on pause because the environment's not correct for flipping a house right now for us anyway. Because it's a hobby. And people do it for a living. What do you do it for a hobby? And your mom has fun doing it, and so that's important to me too.
Always great when a hobby brings an income.
All these things I say to my wife, we've been married 40 years now, and so there's a lot of things that I learned from my whiteboard that I have to use in our marriage, because stuff happens, but. We've when I say we made it through the hard part. Now let's just enjoy the rest. So,
40 years is incredible. Congratulations. Yeah. It's pretty. I obviously grown up with it and seeing it and all that stuff. I mean, you guys have a love for each other that's unmatched. I guess, what's that like? 40 years of marriage, and you have ups and downs. Obviously, I'm married. It'll be 14 years for Kim and I this year. You go through stuff and you go through thoughts, and people grow and change and pivot, and you're not the same person, and she's not the same person that you married 40 years ago. How do you deal with, like, what do you guys do? What's your secret?
I think we grew together at the same time. We just kind of agreed, I don't think there's any major contentions. Maybe it's my memory too. I don't know, but I just don't. There is nothing major contention to say that this is worth not being married for. And so, I still feel it, probably even more so today. And
that's awesome.
She makes it easy on me. Actually, she loves all the grandkids. So I think you suggested that she get a new car called a Nanobus. And
yeah, we're going to get her a Mother's Day or Christmas gift or something with a license plate that says Nana Bus.
yeah, so we pick up all the kids from school. So she's looking forward to that. She's a major component in keeping the family together. I tell her all the time, you run the family now. Steve's wife's going to come in second here, I think, but she's the vice president of this corporation.
Special lady. You two are a power couple.
Yeah.
Speaking of marriage, I had a story I had to work in back into the MasterTax days. My first ever bonus check that I didn't even know what a bonus check was. That's full truth. I'm serious. I didn't know which are the best. Actually, the definition of a bonus, you didn't know it was coming, and you walked over. MasterTax always made it extremely personal. Like, thank you. The manager leader gave it to you, and you looked at me in the aisle. Never forget it. And you said, "You know what's good about this?" When I didn't even know what was in the envelope, you're like, "It's a good amount of money, but it's not enough for an engagement ring." And you just dropped the envelope and walked away. And I didn't even know what was in it. I looked through it, and that was also good advice because, I was, I think, 22 at that point, and it was. No engagement ring was purchased with that, but it was a significant moment that I will never forget. You dropping that, walking away, and one of those memories that will be there forever.
That's interesting. It sounds like something I'd say. I don't remember it exactly, but it makes sense. But both sides of that too, because I think it's important to have a personal relationship with your employees and to be honestly, say thank you. This is an honest, truest thank you I can do. It's not just just what I did.
Yeah, it meant a lot.
Every time I was always a manager or supervisor or something, except for my very first job. I was a dishwasher in a hospital when I was 19 years old. So that was even that was fun. I liked all the nurses. Nurses were nice. They were way too old for me though. I was 19. They were in their 30s, right? So
I think we call them cougars, Dad. We call them cougars.
Yeah.
You mentioned the design part, missing that a little bit. When you look back at with what you've achieved, what were the portions of the day that seemed to fly by where you lost yourself, and when you think back was like that was the most impactful, or the time that you enjoyed the most in creating and running an enterprise?
So let's talk about the development side of it. The development side of it, you have to come up with new concepts. You have to come up with new ideas. You have to be, not only fit the new technology of the day, but you have to be able to be better than my competitors, which was very important to me. And so I always say I designed a lot of stuff on my bike, my road bike. And I'd ride for miles until I had something in my head. I couldn't figure it out. And it was just, by the time I got back to where I started from, I had it figured out. And then I could just go in and build it then. So that was my way of just getting away for an hour, 2 hours, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, and just being able to concentrate fully on this one thing that was not coming together. And so I still kind of do that today. I don't have as many serious things to think about like that, but I do that. Now I get up and I still have a bike. Matter of fact, I got 6 bikes. I take one of the 6 bikes and take a ride around, and whether it be my e-bike or my road bike or my hybrid bike or whatever, but it clears my head.
That was another note that I had from the beginning. When Stephen and I started, you were always, since I joined the company, we're into fitness and making the gym happen. And I remember some portions were stricter than others, but there was a period there where it was just chicken and broccoli day in and day out. And I remember in the back of my head saying, well, if Bill has time to hit the gym and he's, keeping that part on point, nobody else has an excuse either. And I think that trickles down and says more than even though it's a small thing.
Well, I got to the point where I said, I look like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters, and
I don't remember that. I don't recall that, but
yeah, I do. I have a picture in my office here that one of my grandkids looked at, and she goes, Pop, you look fat there. That's my headshot for ADP.
Headshot?
Yeah, but anyway, you're right. I weighed. I was carrying some weight at that time, so I decided that I need to at least 3 days a week. I need to find a trainer, go to the trainer religiously, and get work on that. So I did, and I found a trainer. I liked him, and we've been together ever since. It's been 18 years. And,
maybe though you said that you carry it, that you said carry it. Maybe you just carried it well, because I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but I was
Yeah.
to give a number. I'll just say this. I was about 70 pounds heavier than I am now.
Really?
Wow.
And so now that so now I'm very health conscious as far as that goes. Exercise all the time when I can, and cut down on the Oreos
The Reese's.
Business athlete, the business athlete in motion.
Well, you have been with Chris, your trainer, 18 years, and it's funny how you're like, Chris, I just want the vein. I want the vein in my bicep. Whatever we do, we got to get that vein so it just sits there at all times.
we worked on that today.
That's awesome.
Chris has got a vein that goes from here up to his, I think over his neck and all the way back around. He's like 6'6", but he's fit as a fiddle. And his diet is just incredibly crazy, good, healthy. Like he's always eating a banana because it's time to have potassium. He doesn't care about the banana, and he wants the potassium. And so I'm doing over here, doing curls, and he's eating a banana. Anyway.
Well, we've had a very good conversation here, and I think it would be good to wrap up. You kind of asked we asked the question of, what does success mean to you? You kind of answered that along the way. So we'll pivot here. You've got a lot of experience. You've had multiple businesses, multiple exits. You've seen the ups and downs. You have a long marriage. Just some words of Bill Harris-isms, wisdom that you could share with anyone out there listening who may be going through some tough times, who may be going through some really great times. It doesn't matter where they're at, but I think everyone can learn a lot from you. And we've mentioned multiple times you make an impact on so many people that you come across. Well, now is your chance to make an impact for anyone listening for the rest of time. If you have anything that you'd like to share to wrap us up, I think that it'd be really powerful.
Yeah, we'll find something to believe in. It doesn't necessarily even have to be yourself, but find something to believe in, or have a mission. I mean, a mission or even a milestone. A milestone is something that you reach and you accomplish. So, but that's not necessarily a goal. Have a goal. I wanted to be healthy, so I had a goal of losing some weight and getting that vein working, which I won't going to show you because it's too little. It's embarrassing. But just try. One of the things that I try not to do is be who I'm not, and so I just want to be who I am. Always honest and straightforward, and it's always the same. Whenever you see me, it's going to be the same thing. And people like that. That's great. If they don't, some people probably don't like that. Some people do. Most of my grandkids.
Everyone loves that. I love that.
That's a perfect wrap.
It is.
Perfect summary. I don't want to wrap. Can we keep going?
Yeah, let's keep going. I think I saw Mom running back in the background. Is she there? She can come say hi.
Speaking of Mrs. Harris, she made an appearance.
She was just walking by. Did she hear us?
Yeah, she says, yeah, he asked me before and I said no. So she has a cold or sore throat that she says she got from Steve.
Yeah, not true. I talked to her about it. I refuted that. She got it from one of her grandkids.
Well, anyway, so yeah. So anyway, as far as this success goes, I think I have been successful in a lot of short little things. I think I will be successful in my family ambitions, which because I can tell it's from you, it's from Danielle, it's from Shannon, and I can tell from what the kids, they just do some, how do you do that stuff? I mean, it's just, I told Jack the other day, I said, I got to live another 20 years now just to see what you do with your life. And so maybe even 25.
Yeah, I think passing the century mark is that's longevity right there, and that's gonna happen. Yeah. I think,
and I'm fine with that, or whatever it is. But you're achieving, I think my success still goes by. You have a goal, you have a milestone. Two different things for me, maybe not for everybody, but for me it is. A goal is more of a short-term thing. A milestone is something a little bit longer. I have a goal to go to the grocery store today. Okay, well, not much, but I want to achieve. What do I want to achieve? I don't have any achievements right at this moment.
So one of the things that I talked about, so I took that, right? So I must have taken that from you and I took a spin on it. So I call lofty goals your milestones. So your lofty goal is 1 to 3 years out. And then your milestones I call targets. So your strong input targets. So your input targets are the things that you're working on and no one else sees. Those are just the things you're putting in, the work every day, every week, every month. You have your weekly, monthly, quarterly targets, and that'll keep you on track to hit your lofty goal, which is a year plus out. And the lofty output goals are what everyone, once you accomplish that, that's what everyone sees and be like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. You just did that in a blink of an eye. But they don't know all about the input targets and the things you've been working on behind closed doors. So it's similar, maybe a little bit different terminology, but the same mindset, right? It's like you having those milestones, those lofty goals that are, you got to see what your life looks like a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, and then back into and build those targets or, build those goals, as you say, to keep yourself on track, and then building things that you can visually see that progress.
Yeah, I think
to keep you going.
One of the things that when you ask me these questions, you say, what about that? What about this? I go back to, that's just what I do. I don't even think about it. I just do it. I don't have to think about it. I had friends when I was in 5th grade. I remember this. I had a paper route. I've been working since I was 7 years old, paper route or something else, right? Earning some money somehow. And so, but what I do is on the way home from school, we had a donut truck, right? Big long drawers of donuts. He'd come by, Helm's truck. And so I always buy my friends donuts on the way home because I had money and they didn't. And so it's just, as I've gone through the years, people have said, they would buy me stuff. And I said, what are you doing that for? And he goes, I have more disposable money than you do. I go, okay. And I would say the same thing to you guys, same thing. It's not the money thing. It's just, I live how I am and I'm good with that.
There's a book that was written, and it's a female author. Can't remember her name right now, but it's called Everything is Figure Outable. And I think what you're saying, because the listeners might take, oh, this is just Bill's operating system. He's different than somebody else. And maybe from an IQ standpoint, that might be the case, maybe not. But what you're saying is, because you're saying, oh, this is just me, this is just how I do it, you're just approaching each problem with, I'll keep chewing on it or keep processing it until I get to some sort of outcome along the way. Not that you just know and have the answers. It's a process thing, is what I'm gathering.
Yeah.
But
it's just whether it's feelings for somebody, making them feel better, make them feel good about themselves, or what are you going to do with your future?
Not go to law school?
Yeah. That happened, right, Phil?
Yes. You saved me probably a couple $100,000 and went to an industry I never thought that I'd build a career about. But it was literally just that perspective, sitting at PF Chang's, changed the whole trajectory, just being a sounding board and talking through it. Like, what do you want? What do you like? Like some pretty fundamental questions. But it's not just, me just doing something. You have a way of chewing on problems that is different than other folks, but you don't give up on them. And it is nice to have that natural operating system, but it's not just.
Yeah, you just need to pause and just think instead of talk. Now, when I'm goofing around, sometimes I just talk because I talk a lot these days, it seems. But when I'm serious, it's just kind of like what I just did. I just kind of pause and let's think about the right answer for the audience. The right answer that helps the audience, not the right answer just because it sounds good. And the audience could be 1 or it could be 100, right?
I remember when I got into my first car accident, rear-ended somebody in high school. I know. I bet you do. And I think mom had driven by and she saw it happen, but she had Shannon or something, so she couldn't stop. But she called you and said that I was obviously had a car accident on 60th Street, and the police officer was already there. And I remember you walking out, and I rear-ended this lady pretty good. Like I was just not paying attention, and everyone was safe and it was fine, but obviously wrecked the car and it was my fault. You come up and you just walk up, all very, very calm. You're just like, what happened? And it's like, I rear-ended this lady, and he's like, okay, and then walked away. And I was like, oh my God, he is so pissed right now. Like there was no like yelling or anger or anything. It was just, you could just feel that I had disappointed you, and you went on a walk. You took you didn't speak, right? You didn't, like you said, you went on a walk to think, how am I going to respond to this situation? How am I going to leverage this as, number one, as a teaching moment? Number two, not necessarily rip my kid's head off, even though he's already probably ripping his own head off because of the mistake he made. But I just remember that moment when you came in there and you just were silent, and that was almost worse than getting yelled at, right? And I just remember when I finally got back home, I was like, where's Dad? And Mom's like, he's on a walk. And I was like, oh God, I am in so much trouble. And you came back, and it was very calm. It was just laid down the facts, the mistake that happened. It was a win or learn mentality type of thing. It's like, there's nothing you could do to change that as a parent. You didn't scream and yell at me. And, obviously it was something that impacted me too, because I learned from those mistakes, and, you pay attention more. But I just remember that, like, that you really did have that ability to assess the situation and think before you speak or act, before you do something incorrectly or wrong. So that's one example.
Yeah, I remember that quite well.
You were very upset. You were very upset, weren't you?
I can't see it now, but I did all that. I remember walking up to the policeman and asking him also questions, and he said, and then I think maybe he went to you and said, "Is that your dad?"
Yeah, he did. He asked my dad. He goes, "Yeah, he's not happy."
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I did use this on purpose after you guys told me about it a couple of times. When you said the worst thing you can say to us is, "I'm disappointed in you."
Oh, and, that is brutal. The worst.
And then, I didn't know how effective that was until a few years later. But it's just that's important. I mean, if I'm disappointed in you, that should be important to you that I'm disappointed.
Well, I mean, when you've got a father, I'm very blessed to have a father figure, a father like you, and it was just somebody you go your entire life not wanting to let down, even though you didn't put that pressure on us. It was our own pressure, but we just looked up to you, and still do, so much that we just never wanted to let you down. And so whenever we knew that you were disappointed in us, we took that to heart, and we just always wanted to impress, even though you never needed it. It was just how we grew up, of just wanting to put our best foot forward and be the best versions of ourselves that we possibly could be at all times. And when we made mistakes, we beat ourselves up more than you could have ever been upset with us for. And I think that's part of it, is when you're a present, hardworking father, and that's what I try to do with my own kids now, and learning from you. It's that disappointed word was heavy. It's like when we saw you angry, it's like, okay, he's angry. But disappointed, that was way more impactful.
Right. Well, I think what's important, and what I got a couple of years on you guys, this is something I'm looking forward to. I get to turn 70 this year. I'm pretty excited about that. Just because everybody looks at me and they go, "You're going to be 70?" Well, that's usually when I have hair, though. I don't have much hair. Next time you see me, I'll have hair.